So you may have just picked up your PlayStation VR headset and you might be trying to figure out exactly how to kind of use it. Now luckily for you, this is a pretty basic headset to use, but you will have to use a PlayStation 5. You'll have to own a PlayStation 5 in order to actually use this specific headset. So keep that in mind. And I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough of the outside first. The setup process of this thing is pretty basic. I'm sure most of people will probably figure that out. But at least on the outside, starting off, we basically have our standard headset. Now this thing I would tell you is fairly cheap. I would say it's built, it's very expensive, but it can break very easily as far as I can tell. So just be very careful when you're if you're putting it in a book bag or something. I feel like a lot of these things could actually snap, as you can see, and this is a brand new headset. So just keep that in mind. Now at the top, we have our base. So this is basically where we can go ahead and put our head through. These specific areas right here is where we put our eyes through. And the front portion is something we're probably never going to see, but it's going to be basically where our headset is going to basically be able to see around us. We have on the front 4 different cameras. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. These allow us to kind of have pass-through vision, so we can kind of see everything in front of us and around us while we have these specific goggles on. So if somebody's talking to us, or if we are running into something or going out of bounds of our area, we'll basically see that via these cameras, which is actually pretty nice. Now at the top, you have a few different things. So here, if I go ahead and zoom in, at the right side, we actually have this little adjustment area. So this actually adjusts the goggles inside, and I'll show you that in a second. On this side, we have a little button. So what this button does, allows us to go ahead and hold it down, and it allows us to basically move this specific thing forward or backwards. So if we want to basically adjust other areas of our specific area, we can basically go ahead and move this forward or backwards depending on how much width or how big our face are. Basically, we can move this forward or backwards, making it a little bit easier for us to go ahead and adjust this, which is really cool. Now at the bottom of our headset, if I go and switch it down, you can see that we have a few more things. So on the top side, we have our power button. So this is basically what we click in order to actually power on our headset. We have this button here too, and we have a little tiny speaker on this side. So we have basically the main button that we're probably ever going to use on this headset, which is this button right here, which even allows us to go ahead and turn this headset on in the first place. Now that covers it up on this side. Now if we go and flip it over, I want to go and demonstrate one thing. So with these goggles, right, if you look at these goggles that we're going to look through, there's 2, one here and one here. Like I mentioned with this specific dial right here, if we go ahead and move these dials, you can kind of see that within that, those goggles, they're moving ever so slightly to the left and right. That basically shows and basically means that if we want to kind of change basically if our eyes are wider or less wide, we can change that via this way right here, which is really, really important. Now inside, we don't really have too many crazy things. It's kind of hard to demonstrate, but we basically have our goggles right here. So we can look through our eyes through these glass shields right there. We have these things. So these are basically how it closes our vision. So we won't be able to see things around us. We'll just basically be able to see what we're seeing here, which is pretty basic. Nothing super crazy. All VR headsets have this. On this side, we have our wire. So I'm going to demonstrate that in a second. We have a little bit of a thing right here, which is pretty cool. But then also, if you look all the way to the end, so this is another dial that is very important to remember. So within this dial, what it is it basically allows us to go ahead, and for one, it allows us to go ahead and basically we hold it down, we can kind of expand this further and less further depending on how we want to do it. We can also go ahead and actually change this dial if we want to tighten it. So if we want to go ahead and expand it, like I said, we can make it bigger or longer, and we can go and lock it into place if we want to. So it's a little bit more of a comfortable fit if you want to expand this, or if you want to make it a little bit lower. So that's just one thing to keep in mind too. It's a very comfortable headset to feel. But as you can see, as soon as we let go, if we go and kind of turn this dial, you can see that once we lock it into place and we let go, it'll go and expand, and then it'll kind of set in. And then when we're ready, it'll go and start getting lower and lower. So that's another thing. At the very bottom right here too, one other thing, we have a headphone jack on this side. So if you look right next to this wire right here, there is a 3.5mm headphone jack. So you can actually go ahead and plug in any sort of headphone jack or whatever that you actually want to go and plug in. So that's something that's really, really cool. Now that kind of covers up the headset itself, and on the outside, basically what you're working with. Now, like I said, in order to even use this headset, you have to plug it in via a PlayStation 5 via the USBC wire that's at the end. So this is the wire that you basically have to plug in to your PlayStation 5. Now, I don't know why it's not focusing here, but essentially what this wire does is it will basically go ahead and configure everything that the PSVR 1 basically used to have. There were 20 wires, and this one is just one. So I do have my PlayStation 5 here. So if you look at the front of the PlayStation 5, you'll basically see that there is a USB-C port right here. So there's a couple ports. There's the power button at the very bottom. There's the CD slot if you actually have the disc version. I do not, which is on the side over here. But under the USB Type A port, there's a headphone jack right here. So all you're going to, not a headphone jack, a USB-C jack. So what you're going to want to do is plug in your USB-C port right into the front of that PlayStation 5, and then your headset should turn on. If it doesn't, you can turn on that power button. But then there's another thing. There's a whole other beast of the PSVR headset, and that is the controller. So within the controller itself, this is a very, very interesting controller because it looks very much similar to like the Oculus headset controller. So at the very top, you will see a few things. So for one, you'll see the little joystick. So this is very similar to even like the PlayStation 5 controller. So you should be able to go ahead and basically hold it down. You can go ahead and move the joystick around and click it into place, which is pretty cool. You have this little button here, which is basically like the menu button. So you have the right controller and the left controller as well. In this case, I have the right one on my hand. So you can click here. This is another button. You have the circle button and the X button here as well. Then you have the PlayStation button. This PlayStation button is important because you can click on it. You can get access to your PlayStation menu. If you look on the right side of the specific controller, it'd be the left side on the left controller, you have your specific, little keychain thing, whatever this is. So you can put your hand through here so you don't have to throw your controller around. This is basically like a signal emitter, so I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff in here. On the back side, a few things. So for one, you do have this trigger. So this is just another one of those triggers that you have. You can go and click it in. But also you have the other trigger on the right side of this controller. It would be on the left controller on the other side. So you can go ahead and basically, this is like the preferred way of using it. You have the trigger here. You have this one. You can use whatever way you want to do it. And then you have this controller here, and then you have this stuff. Now, a very important thing, on the back of this controller, you have a USB-C port. So this is where you can go and plug in your specific controller to a USB-C port if you want to charge it. But I've seen a lot of people, in order to actually even use their controllers with their headset in the first place, you have to plug it into your PlayStation 5. So if there's any time you need to go and plug in your actual headset to your PlayStation 5, and you need to plug in the controllers as well, well, you also have another USB-A port right on top of the USB-C port. So what you can actually do is, if I go and focus in, you can grab another, and I think there's also another one in the box. You can grab a USB Type A port, just like how I have here, plug it into the front of the specific PlayStation 5, just like how I have it here. It's very, very basic. I don't know why my things aren't working. And then what you can do is you can grab your controller and you can go ahead, just like how I mentioned before, there's that little USB-C port here. You can go ahead and plug in that USB-C port just like so, and you should be able to not only charge your controller via your PlayStation 5, but you can also now basically connect your controller, your headset, and everything to one specific system. And if you even need to, you have another 2 USB ports on the back of your PlayStation 5, so you have the opportunity and the ability of doing that too. So that is kind of a quick breakdown for the most part of how to use at least the exterior of your PSVR headset. I'm going to have another tutorial on basically how to use the digital side, like turning it on for the first time and everything like that. But that is basically it. As at this point, you should have a decent understanding of the outside and the exterior of your PSVR headset, your controller, as well as at least a few of the first things like connecting it to your PlayStation 5, and even a little bit of a walkthrough between the features and the hardware of both of these specific things. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.